Another edition of Behind the Lines presented by BetMGM Sportsbook and TheLines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich. You can follow me on X at Eli Hershkovich, joined by, once again, Seamus McGee, trading manager over at BetMGM Sportsbook. Seamus, first and foremost, were you guys over at BetMGM popping champagne this morning?
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's what a weekend. I mean, the Sunday slate, we couldn't have asked for better results. Everything we needed to go our way seemingly went our way. One of the best weeks we've really had in about 3 or 4 years booking the NFL here. So really good to see that. And then Monday night, I mean, if it couldn't get any better, we were fine with the covering the spread, but we're talking like a 6-figure swing with that money line cashing for the Falcons.
Yeah, underdogs overall in week 2, 10-4-1 ATS. The bloodbath continued on Monday night. If you're more of a public bettor taking favorites, and I know the handle was largely in favor of the Eagles, so the Falcons score with less than a minute left. Hurts gets picked off by Jesse Bates, and the Falcons pull off yet another upset straight up in week 2. Atlanta closed plus 5.5, plus 200 on the money line over at BetMGM, and they're down to 3.5-point home underdogs against the Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champion on Sunday Night Football. And of course, anyone in Survivor pools listening or watching this, I'm sure, had a tough one as well.
If there are any left.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's left. No one's left standing in the Lines.com Survivor pool. For our staff picks, at least, I believe all of our staff is ousted, has been ousted from the Survivor pool. But no matter how you fared in week 2, Seamus, whether it's you, me, or anyone watching or listening, no one, unless you lost a ton of money, but for the most part, no one is feeling worse than Saquon Barkley with his drop on third down that led to Nick Sirianni decided to kick a field goal rather than go for it on 4th and 3. And Kirk Cousins of the Falcons offense subsequently drives down for the game-winning touchdown. But Saquon Barkley prop bettors specifically. So if you had his over receiving yards, which closed 21.5, open 15.5, mind you. So that is a 6-point difference from the open to close, or 6-yard difference from open to close. Bet up to 21.5, like I mentioned at kickoff. And 2 reviews throughout the course of the game took away a yard each. And then you combine that with the drop on third down, he landed with exactly 21 receiving yards for the game. I'm sure just because of his output in week 1, BetMGM also fared pretty well with Barkley props, at least with the receiving yards in week 2.
Well, maybe better than you think. I mean, we really took a lot of money on the overs earlier in the week from 15.5, 16.5, 17.5, 18.5. So there were plenty of bettors who got on early enough to leave unscathed. But come kickoff, when it was 21.5, most of the money comes in there. So there were a good deal of bettors left on the wrong side there.
Looking at underdogs, not just with the Falcons upset of the Patriots, but NFL dogs of 3+ points or more won 7 games outright in week 2, 7-6 straight up, which correlates to a profitable week for Seamus, hopefully with his wallet, and BetMGM overall. We're not super excited for BetMGM, but we're happy for Seamus if you cash. The most outright wins for any week, the 7 wins of dogs of 3 points or more since 2021. And NFL underdogs of 6+ points or greater are 8-0 against the spread, mind you, over the first 2 weeks of the season, covering the number by 9.5 points per game. The best start for big underdogs of that nature in NFL betting history. So let's take a peek. Let's go a little more niche here with the latter of the 2 categories, NFL underdogs of 6+ points. Of the underdogs in that department in week 3, you have the New England Patriots on Thursday Night Football, the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, LA Rams, who are decimated injury-wise, and the Washington Commanders. Between those 5 teams, which spread do you think is a little more deflated, so value, therefore, with the favorite?
I'd have to go with that Browns-Giants game. I think this Browns roster is head and shoulders way better than the Giants. They coming off a really good win in Jacksonville. The defense really showed up there for Cleveland, and I think it's going to be really, really tough for the Giants to move the ball. Even with the emergence of Malik Neighbors from that last game, he had a really strong Sunday, but I think they're going to get a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones, and I don't think it's going to be very favorable to them at all. The Giants, you could argue, should have won. If they had a kicker, they probably win that game on Sunday. They left probably 6 points on the board just because they had to keep going for it after they missed the first extra point. But I think this is a big mismatch for New York.
And just back up your point there, not that I'm leaning necessarily toward either side, but the NFL, as we both know, is such a week-to-week league where, yes, the Giants could have conceivably knocked off Washington if they had a place kicker healthy, but at the same time, the level of defense going from Washington to Cleveland is so drastic. Also, I think Watson's struggles in week one are still a little over-exaggerated just when you compare his week 1 to week 2 performance. Not to say that he didn't perform well against the Cowboys in week 1, but top 15 in EPA per play in week 2. So Cleveland only scored 1 touchdown, but Watson played better against a secondary that banged up for Jacksonville, but the Giants don't have a better secondary when they're healthy, mind you. So definitely worth taking note of with Seamus's take, maybe not bet, but opinion on the Browns-Giants point spread. On to the Thursday Night Football matchup. We touched on the Jets briefly. They're favored by 6.5 points at BetMGM over the underdog Patriots. Total of 37.5. Both teams 1-1 straight up. So what does the handle look like 2 days before kickoff as we record this on Tuesday, September 17th?
Yeah, handle's pretty good. I think you're going to see the Jets in a lot of parlays, but nothing really too noteworthy on the spread. We're seeing a little bit more Patriots money come in on the 6.5 right now, but I think that's just a little more to do with the number. You take the names of the teams away, I think the Jets would probably be favored by more, but you have a divisional matchup. The Jets haven't beaten the Patriots at home in like 8 years, I think. I'm going to be in the building Thursday night, and as a Jets fan, I have seen everything in this game, going to those games growing up. So, you might think maybe the Jets should be laying a little points, but you look at the context, the Patriots have played really well, I think, for what you thought they were going to be coming into the year. So I think this number makes sense.
Yeah, and you go back, 5+ years ago with the Eric Decker touchdown in overtime from Ryan Fitzpatrick against the Patriots. That's probably the biggest moment at MetLife for the Jets in the
biggest moment for me as a Jets fan in the last decade.
Were you at the game?
I was at that game. It was great. I remember like yesterday.
Well, if anyone's looking to take receiving prop overs or unders, you don't always have to take the over. Eric Decker, former wide receiver of the Jets, also with the Broncos. You have Garrett Wilson, the number 1 receiver for the Jets. His player prop receiving yards lined at 63.5, and he's been about mediocre through the first 2 weeks. No touchdowns. Allen Lazard being the only receiver for the Jets to haul one in over the first couple weeks. The 2 receiving touchdowns in week 2 at Tennessee going to the Jets running backs. Any player prop action that stands out so far with Jets Pats on Thursday night?
Very little at the moment. I think we'll start to see more today. We really just opened them up yesterday, so still some people scouring the line, seeing where they like. I wouldn't be shocked if the Wilson receiving yards goes either direction, because I think you are seeing a lot more teams paying more attention to Garrett Wilson, and the Jets still trying to figure out what they do on offense. But yeah, I could see him going over because he is still Garrett. He's still a great receiver. But I could see under just because if there's one thing Gerard Mayo learned from Bill Belichick is to take away anyone good on your offense and make you beat it with like the 3 or number 4 receiver.
Your guy, John Ewing, looking at the Sunday slate for week number 3. So Ewing reported, I think this was Monday, since the end of week 2 or late Monday night, 27% of the bets have been placed on the Saints to win the Super Bowl. Post week 2, that is the most of any team on the betting board for Super Bowl futures, down from the preseason number of 100-1 to 30-1. And if you look at Derek Carr, among 32 qualified quarterbacks with 30-plus dropbacks this season, Carr ranks number 1 in EPA per dropback, number 1 in completion percentage over expected, number 1 in PFF passing grade. You get where I'm going with this. Number 1 in passer rating, number 1 in yards per attempt. Now, I was high on the Saints coming into the year, probably among the few bettors that were, at least as it relates to the NFC South. I bet the Saints to win the South at right around plus 475. And it's maybe a much more loaded division than most thought. The Bucs undefeated, the Falcons, like we touched on, going into Philadelphia, winning that game outright on Monday night. But this line, New Orleans at home against Philadelphia, so the Eagles looking to bounce back from that disastrous loss on Monday night. The Saints went from plus 3.5 on the open at BetMGM Sunday afternoon, early evening, to minus 2.5. So we've seen a 6-point line move. The Saints now favored just under the key number of 3 over at BetMGM Sportsbook. Does the handle reflect the line movement so far?
Sure, absolutely. I think people are really starting to believe in this Saints team. And, it feels like the Sharps are maybe a year early. Last year, I remember the Saints were a really big darling futures-wise for the Sharps. But this year, it's hard to argue with the handle. They've looked really impressive. First, hand up on me. I came on here last week and said I see that game going under because I don't know how the Saints are going to score that many points. And I think they went over themselves almost in the first half. So, they even surprised me. The landscape of the NFC is so weird, though, because it's like you have 2 teams in the NFC East that are probably going to make the playoffs. You have maybe 3 teams out of the NFC North that can realistically make it. You have a Cardinals team that looks revived with Kyler Murray. So, and a Falcons team who pulled off a big win last night, but they have probably the easiest schedule of football the rest of the way. It's interesting to see with the Saints. I think they've taken handle rightfully so, given how they've looked the past 2 weeks. The offense looks astounding right now. The defense is all it's cracked up to be. So I think it definitely makes sense why we're seeing the Saints money, and I think it certainly reflects the handle that we're seeing on this game so far.
Couple things of note, too, just to add on to your points on the Saints. Clint Kubiak, the difference he's made from Pete Carmichael, vanilla Pete Carmichael, former Saints offensive coordinator on the staff with Sean Payton, so carrying over that West Coast offense, and now a bit of a change, or a big change, going from Kubiak, who stems from the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, at least going back to the last couple of years as the passing game coordinator for the 49ers. And then defensively for the Saints, didn't have Marshawn Lattimore on the field against Dallas. And game script was in their favor from the get-go with the Shaheed long touchdown I think on the Saints' first possession. But still worth noting that the defense performed that well without one of the best shutdown corners in the NFL. So staying in the NFC South, Seamus, the Panthers, for at least the time being, moving on from Bryce Young, the 2023 number 1 overall pick, in favor of 36-year-old veteran journeyman quarterback Andy Dalton, maybe more so known as Andy Dalton. And the Panthers going from 7-point road underdogs at Las Vegas to 5.5-point dogs. So a 1.5-point move in the line so far as we record this on Tuesday. Total of 40.5 in that game. The Raiders coming off of arguably the biggest upset in week 2, especially when you look at the money line odds as high as plus 350 on the money line over at BetMGM. So 2-part question here. What's the difference between Young to Dalton against the number to you? Is it 1.5 or is it more? And then what's the action like for Raiders-Panthers?
I think the number's right. I think it is about 1.5. Maybe I'd go as high as 2. Because you saw it last year. Dalton, first start back for the Panthers, he went into Seattle, put up, 400 yards, a few TDs.
Nearly covered the numbers. Seattle inched ahead late, but Panthers were in that game.
Oh, the whole way. Absolutely. So I think that number's about right. And, action's still early. We pulled the game for a little bit just to adjust our numbers. I still think we're going to see a lot of Raiders money. I think it isn't just a Bryce Young problem. I think this roster, top to bottom, is just not very good. And the Raiders have a bunch of momentum. It's going to be the home opener. I could see them. I could see a lot of money coming in on the Raiders.
Over to the AFC, battle of undefeateds, bit surprising, especially because of the win total money that came in on the Chargers under preseason, and then the Steelers expected to regress, but they continue to do so, or continue to stay in a positive direction with seemingly no offense. Pittsburgh, a 2-point home favorite at home at Heinz Field. formerly Heinz Field, I guess. Minus 125 on the money line, total of 35.5, the lowest total of the week, and rightfully so. Pittsburgh has scored one touchdown in 2 games, and somehow 2-0 outright and against the number. And a lot to do with that defense, especially the defensive front led by Defensive Player of the Year favorite TJ Watt. The Chargers, keep in mind, 2-0 as well straight up, but Justin Herbert having x-rays on the ankle. They came back negative, but could still be an issue, especially if the Chargers get into a negative game state against this Pittsburgh defensive line. So what do you have the handle at for this game, for the spread and for the total, considering how low it is?
I think it's going to be a recurring theme with the Steelers that they'll just be involved in the lowest total you'll see on the board all year. But it's mainly a lot of Chargers money coming in. Some sharp money came in too, open 2.5 down to 2 now. So we're seeing mostly money coming in on LA. I think a lot of people are seeing right through this Chargers lack of offense and a bit high on the Chargers. I think they've looked a lot better than people thought they would coming into the year. And the under, I think we're going to see more money coming on the under, just like we did with that Broncos game last week.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use promo code THELINES, that's the lines one word, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code THELINES. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll then receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code THELINES when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire within 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code THELINES and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Wrapping up here, Seamus, with a new segment I like to call Bookmakers Bets. So you and Christian combining so far, I will preface, I have forced, if you want to call it forced, you each to take a spread and a total. So I'm going to open up the board, but nonetheless, 1 and 2 so far between the two of you traders over at BetMGM. Christian had the Titans and the points in week 1. Bad beat. And you had the under in Cowboys Saints, but you did come up with the first win here on Bookmakers Bets, going with the Jets laying the points in Tennessee. So I'm going to give you the whole board. You could take as many games as you want, spread or total. Your favorite bets in week 3 are which ones?
So I'm going to go with 2 chalky favorites. I think we see a bit of regression with the dogs this week. A couple big numbers. Like I said, I was really thinking about the Jets again this week just because I feel like if they do win, they're going to really put the pedal to the metal and just try to run up the score on the New England. But divisional game, they'll feel great about it. But I'm going to go with, touched on earlier, Cleveland minus 6.5 or even get it. I would bet this up to almost 9.5. I think the discrepancy is that big between these two teams, and they come back home. I think that place is going to be, it's going to be a tough place for New York to play on Sunday. And then I'm going to go with Tampa Bay. I know I'm buying high a little bit on this Tampa Bay team, but I think it's a Broncos offense. We were really high on Bo Nix in the preseason coming in, but it's been a really, really rough 2 weeks for Bo Nix in this offense. The defense has looked okay for the most part, I think, for Denver, but Tampa Bay, continuity matters a lot. They bring back a lot of guys on that team, especially on offense, and they seem to have a really good thing going right now. I think I'll take Tampa Bay as well.
Yeah, I've been tossing and turning over that spread, literally, because the Bucs, while they won outright in Detroit as 7.5-point dogs in week 2, Lions go 1 for 7 in the red zone. disastrous down the stretch in that game, albeit no timeouts on that final possession, but still in a decent position to take the lead. And then the Broncos, Sean Payton seemingly only having the Broncos in a teaser leg because he's not going for the cover. And Denver winds up going for 2 field goals late when they needed 2 touchdowns. I tweeted over and over and over again why coaches decide to, or in lesser words, why coaches decide to make a 2-possession game a 2-possession game, or a 3-possession game a 3-possession game. I have absolutely no idea, but I can't blame you for either of those bets on our first noted edition of the Bookmakers Bets. Do you like that title, Seamus?
Fine by me. And I've got to talk about Sean Payton. I was screaming at the TV when he kicked the field goal to begin with, and then he doesn't even try the onside kick after. Yeah. And then they get the ball back with like 10 seconds left. It made no sense. I think I tweeted, is Sean Payton all right? I couldn't fathom the decision-making at the end of that game.
There was a video I saw, too, with the Broncos down 10 late in the third quarter, midway through it. And Bo Nix is probably reeling off like a 3-paragraph long play.
Yeah.
His play calls are absurdly long.
The Gettysburg Address is what I saw. Yeah.
Trailing by double digits. Yeah, trust me, I was on the Broncos getting the 3. I laid the juice. And I said on my other podcast, the Thursday edition of my podcast here on the Lines Podcast Network, Beat the Closing Number. If I'm lamenting over a Bo Nix pick or 2, I wouldn't be surprised. What happens? He doesn't see the safety coming over on, I think it was a 3rd and goal to Cortland Sutton, maybe even 2nd and goal. Yeah. I'm upset. Still upset. I was on the
Broncos too. It was a hard watch.
Absolutely. But what we're not upset about here on the Lines Podcast Network is you joining us. Great segment, great edition. Another edition of Behind the Lines presented by BetMGM Sportsbook and thelines.com this week with Seamus McGee, trading manager over at BetMGM Sportsbook. Seamus, appreciate the time as always, man.
Thanks so much.
That's going to do it here for Seamus and for myself, Eli Hershkovich. Remember to sign up for your second chance opportunity in the Line Survivor Pool. Starts in week 4. You have a chance at, I believe, $5K, so it's a free contest. You may as well sign up. Be sure to do so over at play.thelines.com. Thanks for watching and listening to another edition of Behind the Lines presented by BetMGM and thelines.com. So long, everybody, and good luck with your Week 3 NFL bets, except for BetMGM Sportsbook.